Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply. This definition is cased opening frame. And a cased opening frame is literally nothing other than sometimes just a way to terminate a wall. You're going to have a pass-through. You're going to have basically a hole in a wall that there'll be traffic going to and fro, and you need a way to just finish that off. And that can be done with just flat one-by material or a hollow metal frame for that matter. Cased opening frame is just going to case off or finish off an opening. And if it's wood, it's going to, you'll have a cased opening frame that's made of wood. You'll have one-by material generally. It'll be attached to your studs, and you'll have casing on both sides of the opening. And this is a very common way to just simply leave an opening, but it's also very common to put a door inside of that opening. And a cased opening frame is going to be used when there's a door involved, very commonly, but not always, with double-acting hardware. So the door can not only swing in, but it can swing out as well. And the typical application for that would be a residential door between a kitchen and a dining room. You'll see that very often. You'll see it in commercial settings between the kitchen and a dining room. You'll have double-acting doors there. So that's going to require a cased opening frame. Very often in restaurants, to go to from the, let's say behind the counter in a restaurant, if there's a counter sort of service, to get into the actual kitchen area, you might have a double-acting door, a lightweight door popularized by Eliasson, and there are other people that make those. Those are gravity-centered double-acting doors. You can have wood doors, you can have steel doors, and they're hung on some sort of double-acting apparatus. The purpose of double-acting is you have to get rid of the stop on the frame. Well, the stop is comprised of not only the face of the stop, but also the longer dimension that's parallel to the frame itself. That's called the soffit. So when you eliminate what's generally called the entire item, the stop, it becomes a cased opening frame. I've even seen people that have needed a double-acting door but kept the original rabbited frame in place, and they built the door to fit inside and in the hardware to attach to the soffit itself, having to undersize everything, realizing that was, or coming to the conclusion that was easier than ripping the existing frame out. So a cased opening frame is going to be used in those applications. Obviously wood, in applications that require wood cased opening frames, hollow metal cased opening frames. This is a Steel Door Institute definition, so we're going to be thinking about a frame that's generally knocked down, can very easily be welded, flat or cased, and into that you're going to simply finish off an opening, or you'll add a door and then hardware to allow that door to double act, except when you have a single acting door. And that single acting door, it's just going to swing in one direction, but you're using center hung pivots, and you're going to put a radius on the pull side of the pivot style, and then you're going to add hardware that will be an auxiliary stop, or maybe a roller latch that incorporates an auxiliary stop. In those applications, you need a cased opening frame. You need a flat frame. So the need for the cased opening frame is really when you must exclude the stop and its soffit. So the definition becomes those frames where you have to get rid of the stop, whether it be finishing something off or intentionally needing a flat frame to serve the purposes and requirements of the opening, single or double acting, depending on the hardware choice, is what it would be. So let's take a closer look at some profiles. We'll look at the definition right now. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Here's our definition: cased opening frame, a frame without a stop and a soffit. See frame profile for detail. Let's look for frame profile. Yeah, there's our good old cased opening frame right there. Again, very commonly knocked down is generally what they are, and they're also obviously available welded. So in a application where you are simply finishing off an opening, and let me show you what that would look like. Here's a typical retail project, and it's a job that I supplied. Not very many openings in the sense of it, it's nothing to write home about. Here we go. opening 20. Oh, 20 and 22, that's what it was. These are literally cased opening frames. So there's absolutely no need for a door. Let's take a little better look at a different floor plan. Maybe we'll come up with something to give us an idea of why it's just what, you know, a lot of contractors would just call a pass-through. And here's what's called a fixture plan, and we can see some indications of exactly what's happening in here. So it appears as if opening 22 is just an employee rest area. Dishwasher, sink, trash, recycling, fridges. That's clearly what this is. Same thing. Same scenario. There's literally having a door there would be to a disadvantage. These public areas where you have people coming and going, you probably don't want a door there. So as you can possibly see, the way that this was drawn is it's showing a stop. That's of course not correct. We know that we would eliminate that altogether. So let's take a look at a technical manual. I use Seco. I would like to use Kiwani, but I don't have it scanned, nor do I know where that technical manual is. Technical manual. Encased opening frames are also used in other applications where you are literally going to apply a stop. You have an application where you need to apply a stop. You could probably end up seeing it there. You could also you will have a cased opening frame when you have the reception window that would be typically in a dentist's office with the ball bearing sliding track application. So an SC profile is what they're referring to. There we go. Well, here's a BC. This would be a cased opening frame with drywall returns. Yes, it should be mentioned, drywall returns can be done as well. The masonry style won't have drywall returns. If you ordered a cased opening frame and it was a knockdown drywall type, it would have drywall returns on it. And the reason it would is that without drywall returns, or that additional back bend that you see here, the frame has a tendency to snag and tear the face of the drywall. And, you know, most contractors aren't quick to anger. Most, but those that are seem to make up for the rest. They don't like when they tear the drywall, because that's a lot. That's extra work, and you know, it's nothing that you want to participate in. So if you have a drywall opening, be sure that you're specifying it as a drywall profile. I think I have the Curry's technical manual. Cased opening. An interior wall opening which has a frame with trim but no stops and contains no door or window. Well, it'll start out that way, but you'll very often add one. Trimmed opening, sure, we'd call it a cased opening frame as well. Cased opening frame, and just jumping into a random internet search. Yeah, masonry profile without back bend returns, and then with back bend returns. You'll want that for sure if it's a drywall opening. If it's a welded frame and it's going to be a partition wall, you're still going to want the factory to produce back bend returns with welded in anchors. Now, speaking of anchors, let's talk about this. We're going to speak about anchors. You want to definitely have anchors thought about. Floor anchors, welded in metal or wood stud, or Z anchors we call it. So you're going to want to fully think about how you're going to anchor the frame. But two things that are really important. First of all, cased opening flush hollow metal frames. Okay, great. This must be some sort of not proprietary, but some type of specialized double acting hardware, maybe from, I forget their name. It's not Elias, and there's someone else that makes doors. That could be a piece of double acting hardware. So this is, here it is. This is probably what it is. Okay, really important to know that you're probably going to have to reinforce if you're throwing up a bomber, even though you really don't get those anymore, but a bomber double acting spring hinge, you're going to need to weld reinforcement into this. So you'll need to know what are you installing so that you can reinforce it properly. You'll absolutely want to do that. 16 gauge cased opening frames are not sufficient for anchoring hardware to. This would be pretty typical. This must be an expandable style frame. That's got nothing to do with us. Or a telescoping. You know, I had mentioned where you're going to add stops. You know, this would be an instance where you're going to literally add stops to something. You're creating something custom. You may need to start with a cased opening frame and eliminate the stop. And that's what we've said previously. A cased opening frame is what you get when you have to remove the stop, whether it be single rabbit or double egress or double rabbit. Okay. Now, a really important thing to consider about this. Let's switch back to the screen view, or the camera view. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. So as so many of us know, our industry is the school of hard knocks, is what it is. I did a job for a client, Wicker Park, North Avenue, Milwaukee, and Damon, bar, restaurant. Needed a double acting door for the kitchen. No problem. Supplied him the cased opening frame. Supplied him the double acting spring hinges, 3 Bomber 3029-8s. Supplied him with the hollow metal door. Frame was welded. He was going to bolt it to an existing block structure. I knew to reinforce the frame. We laid lots of steel down in there for that. What I didn't know was that hardware required a pre-fit to the door. At that time, it didn't dawn on me that, wow, the door's got to become really small for the hinge. And when you look at the Bomber 3029 template, you quickly realize why when you see the cross-section. The hinge itself is so large it takes up 5/16 or 3/8 or 7/16 of an inch. Don't quote me, I don't recall. It's probably 7/16. And I didn't pre-fit the door, so the client gets the frame in, looks great, gets the hinges attached. Yeah, Rich, I can't get the door closed. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, the door's too wide. And then I realized, yeah, school of hard knocks. So be mindful that when you're dealing with a cased opening frame, there might need to be some other consideration made, such as undersizing the width of the door, or somehow notching or altering the door to fit in the opening, or in the instance of a cased opening frame with a single acting door where you're using center hung pivots, what will be the stop? Are you going to apply something? Will it be applied stops? Will it be hardware? What will actually do that work of stopping the door? So you'll have to give consideration to how you'll solve that. Now, a big gotcha, and this one never got me, and I actually just was at a job where we had to install a 7.0 by 8.0 6 1/8 inch wall cased opening frame. This was just going to trim the opening off. So pretty much, if you take the nominal door size, 3070, and you add 1.5 inches in the width and 3/4 in the height, that's your rough opening on a partition wall. That is not the case on a cased opening frame. I've never made that mistake, but when you eliminate the stop, where the anchor is now, it moves much, much closer. So you have to allow your rough opening requirement to be reflected in that, in the sense that your anchor is now much closer out. So you have to increase that width. The height's going to be okay. You don't really care about the stop. But the drywall compression anchor, if that's what you have, is no longer on a knockdown drywall cased opening frame, is no longer installed in the face, in the soffit. It's now 5/8 further out. So that opening needs to get bigger to accommodate that. Okay, using a standard size rough opening is not going to work really well because your anchor is going to be too far out. You'll find that it's just not going to fit. It's not going to fit. Customers have called me up, says, yeah, your frame's the wrong size. What do you mean? It's a 3070. He's like, no, yeah, but it's the wrong size. And I'm thinking, I've never stocked anything but 3.0 heads. It can't be too wide or too narrow. And then we get into it. He's like, I just can't get the tabs and slots to go together. And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. What rough opening did you make? Well, you told me it was 37.5 by 84 3/4. And I said, yeah, I told you that for all the frames that had doors. This one doesn't have a door. This is just a pass-through. Remember, we talked about that different rough opening. So you have to be mindful of that the rough opening is going to change. 16 gauge is really common. I don't see a need, and actually 18 gauge is common as well. If it's truly just a pass-through and nothing's going to make contact with it, 18 gauge is really just fine. and pretty much always is when it's hollow metal. Fire rated, that's not going to happen. You've got to have a stop applied. But getting into hardware, where you've got a double acting door, every restaurant's probably going to have one. They're very difficult to insulate if you've got a double acting door. A lot of residential applications, in vogue the last decade has been 5-foot wide doors, center hung pivots. It swings out, the pivoting point is pulled out. You've got to have some sort of a modified frame for that. Maybe cased opening as it starts out, but then you'll have your stop on the egress side of the opening and then the ingress side at the opposite end. So a lot of considerations when it comes to a cased opening frame. And I think it dawns on me as we go through all of these definitions how one little aspect has so many interconnected points or nodes, like the weave of a spider's web, that when you pluck on one, it ripples through all the rest of them. And I think when it comes to cased opening frames or any other definition, thinking through that logic, thinking through to the next step, make a decision, what's the next step, how will this be accomplished, is how you achieve a greater understanding of what has to happen. Obviously making mistakes, but putting the thought, letting your brain do the work before the work goes to the job site does definitely help defend you against, hey Rich, the door's too wide. I didn't occur to me. Anyway, I ran down, got the door, modified it, hollow metal, just rip it back. That's what we did. Cap back on, and it was inelegant the way that we did it back then because it was just an astral, but it was fine. There are certain types of customers, if they're doing nightclubs, and I could name some, these guys aren't looking at those details. It needs to be heavy duty. They need to be able to paint it black. I want to have it welded, and they're as happy as can be. So the stuff, if there was an edge cap put on, part of a two-piece astral, was meaningless to the end user, and it was perfectly fine. We wouldn't do that as standard practice, but it's something that we had to hang within 24 hours. So perfectly agreeable. Let's move on to the next definition, and the next definition is ceiling strut. Yeah, ceiling strut. I don't get involved in those a lot in the sense that I know what they do, I know why they're there. I know that I did a job one time where that was brought into play, and we'll talk about that. I don't know a lot of hollow metal people that encounter it very often, but that's our next definition, so let's move forward. Thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.